Hey, do you want dessert? I'll get something from the kitchen. I asked my 13-year-old wife, Marie, removing my hand from her shoulder that she was leaning on as we watched TV. No, I'm fine, baby. Well, maybe another glass of wine, giggled the 6-foot-tall beauty, waving her glass at me from the couch I was standing on. I took her glass and headed to the kitchen with a wink, happy with the realization that I was probably going to get lucky tonight. Not that I doubted it much, because only 5 hours ago I'd returned from a 3-week business trip, the longest in our 13-year marriage. It was also the longest time we'd spent apart since we met and started dating in college, when she was a junior and I was a senior, 16 years ago. I learned very early on that wine was Marie's secret. A little, and she'd start flirting. A lot, and she'd pass out. But between a little and a lot was a magical place that was home to a highly charged woman who could put Scheherazade from 1001 Arabian Nights to shame. She was already giving subtle signals that 3 weeks was too long. Reflecting on how lucky I was to have found this woman, I made my way to the kitchen and filled Marie's glass with wine. Then I thought about what I wanted to snack on and realized I wanted something cold and creamy. Ice cream. It's one of my secret vices, perhaps my only vice, but I worked out hard, running 4 miles each day to work off those calories. My vice wasn't alcohol, not cigarettes, not gambling, with the exception of Marie herself. It was cookies and cream ice cream. I set the small bowl on the counter, took a scoop, and opened the freezer door. I looked, took the cookies and cream, and then froze in place as solidly as the ice cream, pondering life, the universe, and everything in the world. Remember the old meme about men who hold the refrigerator door open and look through it? That was me. You see, there wasn't just one tub of ice cream in the freezer, there were two. My favorite, cookies and cream, which was suddenly more dear to me than the woman who minutes before had been the love of my life, and a second one. Butter pecan ice cream. And the thoughts that ran through my head at that moment started with "what the hell?" progressed to "she's trying to destroy me," and "oh my God, she not only destroyed me, she destroyed our marriage." It was then that I realized that my marriage to this bitch, this cheating whore, who I loved more than life until I opened the refrigerator door, was over. You see, Marie doesn't like ice cream. She loves sorbet, but for some reason she hates ice cream. She never buys it unless I specifically ask for it. And yet we had butter pecan ice cream in our freezer. Did I explain that I am highly allergic to pecans? And a number of other tree nuts like walnuts. Did I not explain? My fault. When I eat certain nuts, I have a reaction that causes anaphylactic shock, severe anaphylactic shock, in less than a minute. Pecans definitely fall into this category, and when we were only married for a year or so, I nearly died of anaphylactic shock after eating a pork chop at one of our local upscale establishments. The pork chop was sprinkled with ground pecans to give it extra flavor while frying, but that wasn't listed. I didn't have my EPI with me, my mistake, I know. But luckily one of the diners in the restaurant did. Nevertheless, the whole thing dragged on so long that I spent 4 days in the hospital being examined for neurological damage, and I even developed secondary anaphylaxis in the hospital. Marie was there. She knew about it. She held my hand the entire time I was in the hospital, except when the nurses or her bladder forced her to pull away for a few minutes. From that day forward, I always, and I mean always, kept the EPI within 10 feet of me, if not with me. But there was another acquaintance who also loved ice cream. And his favorite flavor? I'll give you a hint. Jonathan Williams. Jonathan freaking Williams was a son of a bitch who apparently spent at least some time while I was gone, at my house with my wife for the past 3 weeks. Enough time, from what I could see in the clear container, to let him eat most of a gallon can of butter pecan. Jonathan Williams, Marie's last boyfriend before we broke up. Jonathan Williams, single, decent-looking, 37 years old, relatively trim, was part of our social circle. Owner of a cherry muscle car he hadn't earned by hard work, lived only 20 or so miles away from us, closer to where Marie worked. The asshole was at my house. My house. And if he was here, having eaten enough pecan butter to make that hole in the bathroom, he was here many nights while I was gone. He was in my house, in my bed, and in my wife's house. A rebound? No, not really. I called Marie every night while we were apart, and a few times in the afternoon or early evening. She almost always answered when I called, and if she didn't, she always called back within 15 minutes or so. At the beginning of the trip, we talked for an hour or so each day. Later, after about 9 days, the calls got shorter. I didn't expect or even see in my nightmares that Marie would cheat on me, but butter pecan suddenly cleared up a lot of things in my mind. I was stunned. I was hurt. I was angry. But I wasn't in denial. Marie was cheating on me with Jonathan Goat Williams. And it was hard to believe, also because of the way they'd broken up. They were a hot couple until he got caught dating some girl on the side. They had some sort of argument that I've only heard vague scraps of, and they ended up breaking up. They were both on the fringes of my social circle before that, so I didn't follow their relationship. I returned my favorite cookies and cream to the freezer, no longer feeling the urge to eat ice cream. Instead, a thirst for revenge, for justice, for inflicting pain on those who had hurt me awoke in me. I picked up my wine glass and swirled the pale pink liquid in the glass. I must have been doing this longer than I thought because I was distracted from my gloomy thoughts by Marie's voice coming from the family room. "Hank, honey, is everything okay? You've been carrying the appetizer and wine for a very long time." "Oh, I'll be right there. I need to wash my ice cream scoop and it has some dirt on it," I replied, turning on the kitchen faucet. I needed a plan. It needed it quickly. It didn't have to be perfect in the long run, but it had to be good right now. I didn't want to do it today, but I needed an excuse. How quickly our thoughts darken. From the love of my life, the most beautiful woman I know, to cheap whore in such a short time. I held out my wine glass to Marie, but didn't sit back down on the couch. "Thanks. Where's your ice cream, Hank?" Marie smirked, knowing my weakness. "No, I'm not in the mood to eat regular ice cream right now. Not like after being slathered in mud in a balloon." Truth be told, I really wasn't in the mood for anything, but I didn't voice it. I decided to run down to DQ and get a milkshake. "Want one?" Quick thought, milkshakes and wine don't mix, so she'd say no, and that would allow me to leave the house alone for 30 minutes to think. She wouldn't come with me since she was already half undressed when she got home. "Only if they have a Pinot Grigio milkshake," she giggled. "Just for you, I'll ask." I forced myself to flirt with her. "I'm not sure if they have it. Maybe a pink milkshake would work instead?" I continued. "One of the best acting jobs of my life," I said, lightly and flirtatiously, not shaking like a leaf even though my heart was beating so fast it felt like it was about to jump out of my throat. "Oh, of course. Why don't you hurry up and get the milkshakes? Maybe a little later they'll be different," she replied. Grabbing my keys, I smiled at her and headed out the door. 30 minutes to figure out what to do, to map out a revenge plan, to figure out how I could avoid Marie. 30 minutes to at least start planning the rest of my life. I went out and got into Marie's car. She didn't like riding in my truck, so if I took her car, she wasn't likely to follow me if it took a little longer. I dialed the phone number before I even put on my seatbelt. "Hank, what's up? Back from your trip?" I greeted my brother Bobby as he picked up the phone. "Yeah, Bobby. Bobby, are you alone? Is Sue with you?" "Yeah, Hank. What's going on? Why are you talking like that and why are you asking about Sue?" His voice was suddenly much more muffled and the volume lowered. "Bobby, if you love me, just tell Sue I called to say hi and that you're going to DQ to buy something. Please. I need you to meet me there right now. This is one of those situations where you need help hiding your body." Bobby, my 18-month-old older brother, and I were always close and always joked that if something happened, we would even help each other hide our bodies when we were growing up. Bobby was still my best friend and I was still his. Bobby didn't miss a beat. Suddenly becoming much less cautious and much more exuberant, Bobby replied, "Sure, I'll help you with the truck tomorrow. No problem at all. We'll meet early in the morning. If we can make it work, does fishing count?" Boy, Bobby was the fastest man in the world when it came to thinking on his feet. He was the one I called my big brother. His comment would unexpectedly reassure Sue if she flinched when she heard his reaction to my voice and give us an excuse to get together tomorrow for a long talk. "Fine, but now DQ for Michigan, okay?" "All right, bro. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 a.m. Bye?" I knew this was his way of negotiating extra time and saying he'd be at DQ in a few minutes. He lived closer than I did, so he might even be ahead of me, though I doubted it. I quickly got behind the wheel. I wanted to spend as much time as possible with Bobby when he arrived, but also try to keep the trip relatively short for Marie. He pulled up less than 2 minutes after I did. We got out of our cars and walked to the order window together. Nothing was said between us. He could see I was shivering, but hide the bodies could also be interpreted literally. He wasn't going to ask until we were somewhere away from the others. Taking our treats to the farthest table, we sat down and I spoke the words that finally made me realize the reality of the situation. I'm pretty sure Marie is either cheating on me or has cheated many times during my journey. Jonathan Kozlov Williams. Bobby seemed prepared for almost anything but that. Well, maybe one thing he was less ready for. The fact that Sue might have cheated. But the thought that Marie could cheat on me was just out of his reach. What, are you sure? How? When? He pounced on me. I come home and there's butter pecan ice cream in the freezer, almost empty, a gallon jar. So if she's not cheating, she wants to be a widow. Bobby stared at me with his mouth open for about 10 seconds before he uttered, "Shit." Just one word, but Bobby caught my logic in seconds. Speaking of which, where is it? Right here, I replied, pulling an EPI out of my pocket. How long? Who knows? But this is the first time I've caught on that they seem to have set up house while I've been gone. In the meantime, I need a good excuse not to touch her today. I know I can't go on like this, which will make her nervous and let her know that I know something is wrong. I need to not alarm her so I can find out what's going on. Can you help? Yeah, let me think about it. I watched the wheels spin. Suddenly, he smiled. Okay, how do you feel about using near death as an excuse to avoid her for a few days? Huh? I don't get it. Butter pecan, that's the whole answer. I'll order something to induce anaphylaxis. I've already paved the way with Sue, told her you were going to DQ, and then told her I wanted some too. We stopped, enjoyed a treat, and you went into shock. I injected you with epinephrine, then took you to the hospital and we called the girls there. Given your history at the hospital, they are going to keep you overnight. This will help you get through tonight, and you can stay home all day tomorrow and possibly Sunday. On Monday, you will be on the job, and we can get into action. I'll make some separate calls for you tomorrow, and on Monday, we'll both take the day off and get into action. Sound like the rudiments of a plan? Bobby wasn't allergic. He liked raw walnuts, which weren't as bad as pecans or peanuts, but they would do just fine. Yes, the plan has begun. Go get your walnuts. While he was gone, I finished my milkshake. There was no point in throwing it away, even if it wasn't as tasty as it had been an hour ago. He came back with the smallest ice cream that had walnuts in it. EPI first. I'll wait for your signal, but no more than 2 minutes, okay, bro? And just in case, dude, I love you. I love you too, bro. Best big brother I've ever had. I chuckled, taking one of the walnut pieces from his ice cream, which he immediately started shoveling into himself. "Aye, Bwayne Fwiz!" He shrieked as soon as it started inside me. The redness, the tingling, the itching, the squeezing, the sudden dryness in my mouth as my tongue swelled, the rumbling in my ears as my heart began to race. I giggled as the last of the air came out of me. There seemed to be no air coming in, and I felt invisible hands clutching my throat, choking me. Silently, trying not to panic, I counted to 20 before dropping my hand to the table. I saw Bobby take the EPI and prepare it. I don't remember the needle going into my calf, but I do remember Bobby counting down the seconds holding the needle in place. The next memory was the fleeting sensation of being in Bobby's car, and after that, of the doctor holding a bright light, looking at my pupils and asking, "Mr. Preston, can you hear me?" After that, everything became clear again. Just as Bobby had predicted, I was kept overnight. Marie was there. She had time to change her clothes when Bobby called her on the way to the hospital and even started my truck. Sue was there too. Marie took me home the next day, and Bobby and Sue brought Marie's truck in closer to evening. Bobby stayed by my side, even pulling the two girls aside to take care of his little brother, which I think annoyed Marie. He understood that I didn't want to be alone with her, so he made sure I spent the rest of the weekend with him, except for the hours I slept, pretending to be tired after the trip and then the hospitalization. I didn't have to pretend for long, as I was exhausted from tossing and turning all night. I remember at one point Marie was shaking me to wake me up very early Sunday morning, saying I was frantically twitching and screaming her name. She was worried I was having a nightmare. I, in turn, was worried that I wasn't. Monday morning was dreary and dreary like the rest of my life. I woke up looking better, refreshed, and able to get back to work. So I got up and got ready for work, which Marie did. She kissed me as she left, told me she loved me. Yeah, right. And I pretended to have forgotten some receipt from a trip I'd need for my expense report, which allowed me to get back in the house. As soon as she left, I texted Bobby that I was free at my house as soon as he got off Sue's back. It took Bobby longer to get home than I had anticipated, but I was busy as soon as I called and asked for the day off. I sat down at the computer and typed "Best Family Law Attorney for Indiana Men" into Google, and several listings came up. I was checking to see who was on each list and who was local, or at least semi-local, when Bobby arrived. I was particularly pleased that 4 of the lists had a woman in the top 3. That was unusual, I thought. Marie and I didn't have children. Thankfully, we planned to start trying next Thanksgiving. Tick-tock goes the biological clock. So there was no need for a male protector. I just needed a man who would fight for me, because I wasn't on the losing end. I also Googled Best Indiana Family Law Attorney. I added them to the list, knowing that I would end up using a free or cheap consultation, so they couldn't represent Marie when the case was won. Yes, I already knew I would never get over it. Never get over it. Our marriage was destroyed the moment I realized what butter pecan meant. Bobby arrived just as I was putting together my call list. First, the top 3, then the top 3 male attorneys. I knew I would end up taking one of them, but like I said, I needed to make sure they wouldn't represent her. The top 3 were first, simply because I figured I had a better chance of missing them if Marie somehow found out what I was looking for. "Hey bro, where are you? I got something for you," Bobby called out to him as he walked into the house. "In the office, come back." Just in case, I minimized my web browser. It was in incognito mode, which closes so quickly and leaves no trace. And minimized my call list. I didn't need to do that, but I didn't know if he'd be alone when he came in, and he was. "Trying to be sneaky, Hank? Good. That's the way it's supposed to be. Brought you a present, that's what took you so long," he said as he handed me a small package. Looking into it, I saw a small clock radio, a tiny ceramic dog, 3 miniature tape recorders, and 2 thick pens. "What are these?" "Recording devices. The clock and the dog are cameras, see?" He pointed to the small lenses. Dictaphones are small, voice-activated, and can record for up to 8 hours. The pens look like voice recorders, but there are only 2. But they are downloadable via Bluetooth. If you have a cell phone nearby with the appropriate Bluetooth and app, you can record data and automatically dump it, so you don't need to interact with them regularly, just get close enough. The battery lasts for 30 days. I received it from Evan Smallwood this morning. Evan is the reason I was determined to become a male attorney. He was divorced after his wife, Karen, was caught expanding her horizons and spreading her legs with her boss 2 years ago. I knew he realized something was wrong and took over after he got the goods, but before things went quiet. She begged, pleaded, he laughed. And then she destroyed him in the divorce. Indiana is a no-fault state. She got the best lawyer. Evan cheaped out. She used her boss's money so he couldn't sue her for harassment at work. And Evan made the mistake of putting the pictures on the internet. The judge was no laughing matter. Evan didn't go to jail, but it was a close case. Anyway, she cheated, begged him to forgive her, but in the end she got 70%. He got 30% and community service, and still owes her child support, and she's still spreading her legs to her boss. Isn't life wonderful? That fate didn't suit me. No, sir. I wanted revenge, but I didn't want to risk ending up in jail as someone's girlfriend. "I have a list of lawyers I want to contact," I replied. "So no chance?" "I didn't think so, knowing you, but a day or 2 to think about it." No chance, one and done. That's the way it's always been after a hell slut. Or maybe I should say the first whore from hell. I grinned wryly. Before Marie, I had only been engaged to my sweetheart Michelle for 6 months. College was wonderful, I thought, for us as a couple. But Michelle soon discovered that it was also a hunting ground, or rather a place of entertainment, for other guys. When I found out that she had slept with at least 15 guys since accepting my ring, the health service announcement said I should come in and get checked for chlamydia, I was furious. She didn't even have the guts to tell me in person. She let the health department do it, She cried. I cussed. She said she was just trying to piss off the other guys before we got close. I cussed. And in private, I cried. The 6 months I spent in monasticism after I got the ring back reinforced the idea that I didn't like people playing with my toys or in my playground, and I didn't want to play in other people's playgrounds either. I needed a single woman, and I was going to be a single man. While Marie wasn't my backup when I started dating again, she was the first and only person I became intimate with after Michelle. Marie knew my story. She had heard it told, and we were dating at the time Michelle made her last attempt to win me back. I have little doubt that Michelle loved me in her own way. I just couldn't accept that she also loved others. So, Marie knew my history, knew how I perceived cheating, and knew my one-and-done philosophy. Bobby knew too, of course, so his question was a mere formality. And I knew, even better than perhaps his Sue did, that he shared that philosophy, and that if Sue ever cheated, I would help Bobby bring as much death and destruction down on her head as I could. And by golly, I loved Sue as a daughter-in-law. I realized she was perfect for Bobby within a couple of days of meeting her, and I was the one who set them up on their first date 5 months later. The only couple I thought more perfect than Bobby and Sue were Hank and Marie, and we already know the dark thoughts that visited me. We shouldn't pounce on her. I don't want to go to jail. On the other hand, we might want to pounce on his ass, but I don't know how we're going to do that. We'll figure it out as we go, bro. At that, Bobby grinned. I've always been on top of things with my rhymes, but I've got skills with rhymes. The mood improved. Bobby always knew how to make me laugh. We worked, trying to figure out where to put the two cameras. I didn't think we'd get anything on camera, at least not until the next time we left town. But even then it was hard to figure out where to put them. I finally decided to put the radio alarm clock by the TV in the bedroom. We didn't use it much, but its presence there wouldn't look too odd. The ceramic dog was a little more difficult. It didn't match the various knickknacks in the house at all, so it took a while. Eventually I got over it and hung it on the closet so that it was clearly visible from the front door but not conspicuous. Basically, all it could be used for was to see who entered the house. That got me thinking about how Evan used it. Probably best to put the pen in her car and in her purse. You could also put the recorder under the seat of her car, one in the kitchen somewhere and the other in a spare room. The dog will pick up sounds from the living room, so you already have all the obvious places covered. What do you say, Hank? What's two in the car for? Say hi. The pen will go in the pen compartment you have when you need to write something down. It'll be a backup. The voice-activated voice recorder will record conversations if she puts you on speakerphone. You'll be able to put the pen in her purse, right? Maybe, but at least I only have 3 to take out. Let's call the lawyers. Hank and I spent the next hour and a half setting up appointments for the next few days with every attorney on my list. Fortunately, we were able to meet with one of them at 1 p.m. that afternoon. The attorney's office was not far from Marie's office, so I figured I could sneak into the parking lot near her work and set up the recorders on my lunch hour. I pulled into the parking lot at noon, and it was here that, in retrospect, my first possible mishap in Operation Don't Trust and Verify occurred. One of Marie's co-workers saw me pull into the parking lot as she was leaving for lunch and waved me over. With any luck, she'd just assume I was taking Marie to lunch and forget I'd arrived. I found out later that she told Marie about it 2 days later. After finding Marie's car, I put a pen in the stack of pens in the dashboard drawer and then reached under the seat to put the tape recorder in. I must have caught my hand on one of the seat springs or something because I felt a sharp piece of metal pierce my skin. Oh shit. I shoved the mag under the seat, removed my hand completely, and blotted a small amount of blood with a tissue. Then I closed the door and headed to the reception. I met with the lawyer at 1/4 Why do doctors and lawyers always keep people waiting? I told him everything except that I had a few lawyers to talk to. He basically rolled his eyes at the butter pecan proof and disagreed that I might know what I was talking about. He was certainly willing to give me an advance if I wanted it, but said no judge would buy it. I went into the new bank to do a few preliminary things like open another account, and then went for a walk somewhere until it was the right time to go home. For the rest of the week, life went on. I managed to check the 2 cameras daily, they only showed my wife and I, as well as the recorder in the kitchen once, and the recorder in the spare room once. The recorder in the spare room showed nothing, and the kitchen recorder only recorded meaningless conversations between Marie and me. I got close enough to Marie's car to plug my phone into the pen in the car, but when I listened to the conversation, it only contained our conversation with her on Wednesday and nothing else. The conversation went as follows: the sound of a door closing, the sound of a door opening, the sound of someone getting into the car, then the door closing, the car starting, some kind of road noise. Brr, 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 ballop, my voice. Hey, baby, where are you now? Near work, what's up? I'm craving some Chinese food. Could you stop and pick it up if I order ahead? Sure. Kung Pao chicken and maybe some shrimp toast? Okay, I'm buying. You're flying. I'll see you when you get home, Marie. Okay, honey, love you. Bye. There were also the sounds of doors opening and closing, the occasional road noise, but that was it. Friday, I finally managed to arrange to drive Marie's car to the DQ where I met Bobby. We pulled the recorder out from under the seat and pressed the play button. The voice-activated recorder under the seat was a little different. My voice, oh shit. I knew immediately that something was wrong. I didn't hear the knob click as I hooked my arm. The next sounds were a rustling, a door closing. The door opened, someone came in, the door closed. The noise of the road. A car stopping, door opening, door closing, car starting, road noise. And then the conversation that ended it. Brr, 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 ballop. Jonathan Williams' voice. Hello? Hey, stud. I was just getting warm thinking about you. The traitorous tramp gestured. God, you were so good last week. I wish Hank hadn't come back for another 3 weeks. Okay, okay. When can we get together again? Right now, I don't know. It depends entirely on Hank's schedule. Right now, he doesn't have anything on his schedule. Not more than once every 2 months, but he's been gone for 3 weeks. I don't think he'll be sent out again anytime soon. 2 months? Oh no. You'll have to wait. Marie scolded him. Oh, Marie, don't be like that. You know I can't resist you and you can't resist me. I've been very good at resisting you for the last 15 years. Just because I finally let you have some doesn't mean I can't shut you back up if you get too pushy. Yes, I enjoyed our happy little adventure of domesticity, but I've gotten along just fine without it all these years. I can do it again. And there it was. She admitted it, but it was also obvious that this was really the first time they were living together. That wasn't to say that there hadn't been something shorter before this, but it was safe to say that this was the first time she'd gone completely off the deep end. At least with Zazrans. Look, I'm going to let you go. Hank was sick over the weekend, and even though we dealt with it last night, it's not enough. I heard Williams hum slightly at those words. I intend to rock his world tonight, and I only called to recharge a little for starters and to let you know that you don't need to call me. I'll call you next time he's gone. I still love you, Marie. I know I messed up, but I still love you. I love you too, Jonathan. But I love Hank. You're just a reminder of what could have been if you could have kept it in your pants back then. Marie, you must feel more for me than you do for Hank. After all, you were with me while he was gone. You were my wife, not his, while he was gone. Until he was gone, until he was gone. I heard her repeat it with emphasis in her voice. I took nothing from the time I spent with him. He wasn't there. And then I let you use the unused scraps of my emotions, my love, my lust. Yes, I still feel something for you, Jonathan. But I don't love you. I love Hank. Great way to show it, you mistrustful slut, I thought. I'll take what I can get. Bye, Jonathan. I'll call you soon, and I'll see you next time Hank leaves. The noise of the road. The car stopped. The door opened. And then it became clear why this last conversation hadn't been recorded on the pen. What is it? Marie's question was devoid of context, so I didn't know what she was looking at. What? There was a click. A click. A click. What the hell? Shit. She was silent for a moment. Why does he have to be here? Is it really? And then silence. I don't know if the recorder turned off or if it was running continuously, but after a moment she came back. It's him, she muttered. Shit. Hank must have put it here. And I realized she'd discovered one of the bugs. Judging by what we'd already pulled out of them, she realized the pen was a bug. I was suddenly glad I hadn't had time to plant one of the bugs in her purse. Okay, entering pin. 1234. That's it. Erase the entry. Done. Damn, I'll have to redo this tomorrow. the sound of a door closing, the sound of a door opening, the sound of someone getting into a car, then the door closing, the car starting, the sound of the road, the sound of a car stopping, a door opening and closing. That must have been her driving to work on Wednesday. The sound of a door closing, the sound of a door opening, the sound of someone getting into a car, then the door closing, the car starting. Some kind of road noise. Brrr, 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 balup. My voice again, almost certainly from the Kung Pao chicken conversation. Hey baby, where are you now? Near work, what's up? I'm craving some Chinese food. Could you stop and pick it up if I order ahead? Sure. Kung Pao chicken and maybe some shrimp toast? Okay, I'm buying. You're flying. I'll see you when you get home, Marie. Okay, honey. Love you. Bye. There were still the sounds of doors opening and closing, the occasional road noise, but that was it. And I realized. She'd found the pen, but not the tape recorder. She'd erased one tape, or at least the conversation she'd heard, but not the second. Bobby looked at me. She knows you suspect something. She found the pen. Has she acted any differently since Tuesday? Although I've gotten more from her in the last week than I did all of last year, including her birthday. That's not serious, brother. But how have you been acting? Were you able to keep your cool? I was Rain Man, bro. Kind of a Tuesday Wapner type. I didn't know anything and was as normal as I could be. But she must think I'm the love child of Rain Man and Forrest Gump. Bobby laughed, which diffused the situation. Oddly, he was more tense than I was after we found out the truth, but what is. Okay, Bubba Gump, you're definitely good at ignorance. Just don't start talking about shrimp or about Kmart. And we both laughed. It felt good to laugh. In that moment with Bobby, I knew everything was going to be okay. No matter what happened, I had someone who would always be there for me, always keep me grounded. It wasn't necessarily someone I wanted to always have by my side, since I couldn't picture Bobby looking good in a little black dress, and he definitely wouldn't be someone who would shake my world at night, but it was something. Something I could hold on to during the dark days I assumed would be ahead. So I found 4 of the 6 lawyers. I think I could use this one. There's no way she's going to do anything in the house, and she's smart enough not to look in the house for hidden cameras, microphones, and the like. We screwed up the pen, but I think that's enough. What do you think, Bobby? I think I'm following your lead, little brother. You're in charge of everything. I'll back you up. I'll give you an alibi. I'll help you hide the bitch's body or Williams. Whatever you say, brother. Brothers, faithful wives, cheaters, then assholes. Bros first. Hell, I'll even be your cellmate, but I'll get the bottom bunks and you'll just be the bottom if it comes to that. Hell no, bro. Hell no. I laughed along with him. The darkest and most devastating thing that has ever happened to me, and I joke with my brother about gay prison. This is friendship. That's love. That's my brother Bobby. But back to the main thing, bitches. I want to destroy asshole and burn that bitch to the ground. We need a plan. But I'd rather we didn't end up cellmates. The smile didn't come off my face for a few seconds and Bobby let it. But when it started to fade, Bobby stopped smiling too, and we started making plans. So what does asshole have that we can destroy? Besides Marie. Sorry, besides that bitch. Well, let's go in order. He has his life. Bobby nodded. He has his health. He's got his apartment. He has a job. He has a car. He's got a reputation. That's it. At this, I paused. That car? I think he values it barely more than he values himself, and even more than he values his place or his job. Definitely more than his place, since he bought this apartment so he could have a garage to store the damn thing and work on it. Bobby and I were referring to a classic 1969 Plymouth Barracuda convertible Sierra Tan Poly, also known as Brown, with the so-called CUDA package and a big 440 big block engine. It was a rare version of one of the hottest cars of its era. While this was not the Barracuda that became world famous, it was the next 1970 CUDAs. It was the one that started the Barracuda's fame, equipped with the last powerful engine before the arrival of the legendary Hemi. The car wasn't worth $800,000 like one of the 70 CUDAs, but in the condition he kept it in, it was worth $90,000, $100,000. He inherited the car from his grandfather, who unfortunately had a stroke a week after buying it in 1969. His grandfather never got behind the wheel, but he wouldn't sell it either. And when he died in 2007, Asshole inherited a nearly 40-year-old Barracuda with only 132 miles on it. It wasn't great in some ways, but it was still a brand new classic car. Mudak has probably added 2,500 miles to the odometer since then, but used it very, very rarely. I'm a Corvette enthusiast and Bobby is a Mustang enthusiast, but Mudak did have one of the classic cars while we dreamed of a Stingray, me, or a Mach 1, Bobby. Yeah, losing that car would be really painful, but I can't just destroy such a beauty. The Cuda did nothing to me, only to the asshole who owned it. It's a good old pebcac, though I'd say it's more of an absap problem with the Cuda. Absap? The butt between the steering wheel and the pedal? I grinned when he realized. So the car isn't damaged per se, but deny him that. How are we going to do that? Steal it? Send it to some deserving millionaire? I like your idea, but I don't know anyone we could sell it to, and I'm not sure we wouldn't end up in jail if we stole it. Does Evan know anyone, Bobby? I mean, he's still dealing with the aftermath of his hellish fights. Maybe he knows someone. After all, if I leave town, I'll have an alibi. And we know there's a chance Asshole and the whore will get together. I don't think that's going to happen right now, brother. She knows you're suspicious because she found the pen. She'll look for the cameras and eventually find them, I think. She'll be on her usual behavior because she doesn't know for sure what you know, only that you're suspicious. So she'll be a good wife for a while. Well, and if you want to stay with her for a year or two, then woof, that's woof, up to you. And he coughed slightly, which sounded suspiciously like the word woof. A barely perceptible chicken woof suggested to me that he was considering that very option. His not-so-subtle way of saying that if I don't leave her, I'm a coward and a scoundrel. Of course, a fake trip followed by removing all the bugs a week or so later might make her think she got away with it. The trip implies that you're trying to get her to back off, and the removal a week after the trip implies that you didn't find anything and decided that whatever made you suspicious was wrong, and you don't want her to find the bugs and start something based on wrong suspicions. That could turn her thinking upside down. I'm just not sure I'm in a good enough frame of mind to stay with her. It's clear from the call that she thinks she loves me. I'm not sure I agree that she can sleep with Asshole while I'm gone, but she thinks she does. Maybe she'll never do it again, realizing how close she was to it. Or she'll get craftier, and I'll never be able to catch her again. But one way or another, we have to catch Asshole, and as soon as possible. All right, let's think about it overnight. Tomorrow morning, you and I will meet up, go fishing or something. In the meantime, from now on, you and I need to sweep our cars every day and only talk about this on our work phones or in person. She might just stick a tape recorder on you or me if she can figure out how to do it. I actually think we should take the boat out and fish tomorrow. We'll leave our phones in the car, too. You're not going to make me Fredo, are you? You're not going to put me out of my misery, are you? I asked, referring to Fredo's fate in The Godfather Part 2. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse, Bobby joked back. We hugged and agreed to meet at 7 the next morning to fish. This was nothing unusual, so it didn't upset Sue in the least, but Marie might have been worried, as she should have been. That night, Marie buried me in the sheets again, leaving me shivering. As she curled around me and lay on top of me as I dozed off, I remember her shivering quietly in my arms, and how she whispered softly to me when she thought I was asleep. I'm so sorry, Hank, I love you. Just you. I could feel the moisture from her tears on my chest. It was a shitty world where she cheated, knew I suspected her, and yet neither of us could talk about it. Life, huh? My dreams that night were the most pleasant I'd had since I got back from my trip. I distinctly remember driving the kudu asshole at high speed down a long road, being picked up by some nameless and faceless woman who smelled like Marie's hair, and the fine rain from a cloudless sky wetting my chest. It is one of the most vivid dreams I think I have ever had. I think I understand what the dream means and where it came from, but neither before nor later have I ever smelled odors in my dreams. But the smell of Marie's shampoo always stood out to me from this dream. When I felt the vibration from my smartwatch waking me up at 6 a.m., Marie wasn't in bed, but I could smell bacon cooking. Although Marie often cooked in the mornings, she rarely cooked on the days I was away fishing. She usually stayed in bed and slept until I left. I would even return from a short fishing trip and find her asleep in bed at 11 or so when the weather changed and we cut the trip short. After getting dressed for the fishing trip, I headed into the kitchen and saw Marie finishing making a bacon, egg and cheese sandwich and a thermos of hot coffee. The beer cooler was already by the garage door, and looking at the cardboard in the trash can, I realized that she had put an entire Bud 12-pack of bottles in it, probably along with a couple of sandwiches and other snacks. She was trying to be the perfect wife, and in doing so, she knew I either knew or suspected the elephant in the room. I spent a few minutes with her, time I would normally spend icing beers, making sandwiches, and waiting in line at McDonald's for a sandwich and coffee for breakfast before meeting Bobby, to talk to her. She was affectionate, sweet, and yet much more shy than I was used to for a woman I'd been with for so long. I saw the fear in her eyes for the first time in my life, and could almost hear the desperation in her voice as she rushed to me to kiss me, repeating between kisses, "I love you, Hank." For my part, I returned the kisses, though not as desperately, and said simply, "I love you too." It wasn't a lie. I hated her. I loved her. I hate what she did. I love that she's with me. I hate what she turned me into. I love how she made me feel during the years we were together. It's a two-faced dichotomy, one of those Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde things. I left and met Bobby at the spot on the Big Blue River where we used to put his boat in. He had just finished launching the boat and was pulling into the parking lot when I pulled up. When I saw where he was, I parked, threw my phone on the seat of the truck, grabbed my cooler and coffee, and walked down to the boat. He had already put his rods and tackle aboard. Bobby joined me a minute later. I held my hand like a phone and then looked at him. Blushing, he turned around and walked to his truck, returning a minute later. "Leaving the cell phone behind was your idea. Getting decrepit, old man?" I gently chided him as he climbed into the boat. He looked at me with a sour expression, reached into the refrigerator and pulled out a Bud. Unscrewing the lid and taking a sip, he drank half the can. "Too little alcohol in my blood to function this early on the water, but it's about 5 o'clock, he replied. "Yeah, maybe in India or something. Don't you think it's a little early or a little late for a Bud? Besides," I snapped back, starting the motor and pulling away from the shore, "I thought I was the one who was supposed to be drinking around the clock. I'm just getting a head start. Gotta keep you from becoming an alkie. Don't you want to drink for 10 hours? He joked back. "Yeah, but I think you're still on the 10-second chip. Clean and sober are two words that don't describe us by the middle of the day. Cheers." I picked up my coffee cup. Bobby grinned and finished the can. "Of course, if you keep this up, I think we're going to need a bigger boat," I joked, quoting Jaws. "But it'll be designed for your empty cans, and we'll need more beer." "Don't worry, the beer's here," he objected, opening the wet-bottomed refrigerator. "I didn't plan on us catching a lot of fish today. I didn't even bring bait with me." I grinned. We got out on the river and headed upstream to the turnoff at Mill Pond. Although Mill Pond was a popular fishing spot, the bend in the river had increased the current south of the pond, causing fewer fish in the area. I, for one, wish you had brought bait with you, preferably a buttfish. Even if life is crappy, a nice perch would still be a nice diversion, and I bet Marie would even cook it for me. It was weird. I realized that it was the first time I'd ever called her Marie in all my time with Bobby. I knew I shouldn't call her a bitch, a slut, a whore, a harlot, a cheater, to her face or in the presence of anyone but Bobby and maybe Evan. But I took some of my anger, some of my rage, some of my hurt out on Bobby by calling her that. I wondered for a second if my dream had something to do with not calling her bad names, until Bobby interrupted my reverie. "Okay, I've been thinking. I think I know how we can do this." "Do what? Remove the scrotal sac and all the associated appendages from Jonathan Williams?" "Well, sort of. But I was more referring to the machine. You can tilt it so he loses something, but that depends on him doing something too, which I can't guarantee." "But Grand Theft Cuda?" "Yeah, I've got that one figured out. I spent half the night thinking about it. Witness that, since I haven't slept, today is still yesterday. So this," and he pointed to his empty can of beer, "is not too early. It's just a very late Friday night beer." "Oh, Grand Master of Beer Justification, what are you up to?" I asked with a smart aleck look. "7. We're going to arrange for it to be stolen at a car show. No one will think twice if he sees someone hitch it up and drive off toward the end of the car show. He won't be able to resist showing it off, so we'll just talk him into taking it to the show, invite a couple guys in jackets that say Cuda Classics or something, and distract asshole while they load it up at the end of the show. It's always chaos at these events, but who the hell would steal a classic car from a show, and in the open?" We had them take the car to a secure storage facility rented in his name and leave it there for 6 months. In the short term, he would file a theft report, get a payout from the insurance company, and the car would sit in a storage unit rented in his name. A month or two after he gets the insurance, the police will find him, and he and Bubba will be serving time in the big house for insurance fraud. Okay, let me think about that for a second. No. I see too many problems for such a complicated piece of shit. Besides, his name alone in the department won't be enough. See, that's the beauty of it. You can just arrange to have the key to the device on the keyboard at his house, still labeled with the tag. So, since I know you're going to take it apart, here's the deal. What you may not know because you didn't know Marie very well is that Evan's cousin Darla is the same girl that asshole cheated on Marie with. Darla was a freshman and grew up in Oklahoma. You met Darla several times over the years. Darla didn't know that asshole was having an affair with Marie, at least according to Darla, when they were dating. She thought she was asshole's girlfriend, so you can imagine her surprise when Marie slapped her in the face when she found out. According to Darla, asshole lied to Marie, telling her that it was Darla who started it and pursued him. Darla had rarely dated before, and asshole was her first, so she felt betrayed by the fact that he lied to Marie about her and she got slapped for it. She blames Marie a little, but she hates Williams. And Darla, heck, that whole family, they hold a grudge. You've never been a friend to Evan, and you were nice to Darla when you were dating. She likes you, as in, she likes most people she doesn't think have wronged her, but she holds a grudge against you. Okay, so you, me, Evan, and Darla all want to bring the sky down on asshole. But what does that have to do with the car? That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. Darla owns a couple warehouses, or at least her husband does. Darla even runs one of them. And Darla knows where we can get a couple guys to move the car. There are cameras in the warehouses. So when the police start snooping around, they'll look at the camera footage, see that we paid for the place, and see us or someone else removing the car. They won't see the asshole. But here's the thing. Guess which storage center is closest to Williams's house? It's not the one Darla runs, it's the one she and her husband own. She can take it for one weekend and move the cameras out. It will take a few days to diagnose the faulty cable, but we're renting the room the next day, so the camera will be off when we do. She won't be there, so there's no connection between the camera breaking, her, and us. Okay, then we rent the room. We can hide the rest of the stuff too, I guess, like the license for the truck carrying the car. We'll make sure no one looks in the direction of the camera while they take the car off the trailer and into the unit. That makes sense. Someone might even dress up as asshole earlier in the day if we can foresee it. So it'll be more obvious. Hell, we could even take a picture of him with the car so the police can see how he's dressed. I was starting to like that idea. Now you're thinking right. The key is how long he'll be distracted enough to steal the car, and how long to wait for an anonymous tip or whatever method we use to have the car discovered if the police don't discover it themselves. It seemed to Bobby that most of the answers to these questions had already been found, but one remained open. That leaves the question of the key. How do we make sure he has the key at home? Okay, I still don't know how to do that. I think we should just put it on a keychain right before we notify the police, but I don't know how to do that yet. You'll have to figure out some steps yourself. Underwear theft? Question marks? Profit? Is that what you mean? I'm not an underwear dwarf, Bobby, I replied, referring to an old episode of South Park. Hey, I only see 3 question marks and one small problem that only you can find a solution to. A key situation, a distraction, and our alibi, and then the problem. What problem? Can you stay calm long enough to pull this off? You won't be able to do anything to Marie until he's in jail, and you won't be able to do anything to make the police pay attention to you. When his car goes missing, if you divorce him, you'll be the prime suspect. The cops don't care if Marie's slutty or not, they care about the stolen car. And from the way he treated Darla, asshole will throw Marie under the bus if he thinks you stole the car. You know, that would be perfect. Get him to throw her under the bus. I could use that to push the divorce if he went on record saying he thought I had something to do with it because he entertained her and I wanted revenge. That could have worked very well. Bobby blurted out in the biggest, most sinister grin I'd ever seen on his face. Lead a horse to water, and eventually he'll find it and get drunk. Now you understand what my ultimate goal is. Wait, you've already figured that out? You bastard, why didn't you go for it from the beginning? Hissed I. Because I needed you to see there was a way out. Once you realize that, you'll realize you can pull this off with Marie. When the car disappears, we'll hint to Zasrans that you did it, or start a rumor that you had something to do with it, and it'll get to him. He'll turn you into the cops and end up giving Marie a good beating before the hammer comes down on her. Pass me the bade, time to celebrate. I smiled back at him. It was a good morning for fishing and drinking. Bobby volunteered to be the liaison between the various people involved in the case and make sure everything went according to plan for the next week. I arranged with an attorney, a shark woman, and she prepared the paperwork but didn't date or file it. As soon as I saw Evan, he looked at me and smiled. We didn't say anything. He just smiled. I knew he was thinking about getting revenge on all those assholes who sleep with other people's wives, and for the first time in my life, I saw him really smile. It was nice in its own way. Meanwhile, Marie was still trying to spoil me, and the bugs weren't picking up on anything new. I was constantly looking for items on me or in the truck that might have been designed to flip the table and bug me. It probably made me paranoid. If Marie really loved me and didn't want to lose me, she would act normal and try not to give me any reason to think she didn't trust me. That doesn't mean she wasn't trying, but if I had to guess, I'd figure she was waiting for me to get rid of my suspicions. The pen and the recorder under the seat always matched, and I started counting the number of times I'd driven the car. There were a few more than I expected, but all the conversations they picked up were innocuous, and both sets of recordings started with me stating the date they were last reset, so I knew they hadn't been tampered with. For my part, I couldn't act 100% normal with her, but I didn't let my anger out of the bottle either. The most interesting thing, in my opinion, was that the car show fell into our hands unplanned. It turned out that in 2 weeks there was a local show, smaller but still pretty big, that was being held to benefit the local Peyton Manning Children's Hospital. This asshole signed up to show off his car, and it was a great opportunity. I was purposely kept out of it. My revenge would fail if, during the police interrogation, I blabbed and said something that showed I knew too much. But it also increased my anxiety. I didn't know what dotted the lines and what dotted the dots, or vice versa. Hopefully the other way around. And all of this was happening at a time when I still had to put up with Marie and somehow maintain a semblance of normalcy around her. She saw right through it, I know, but since she didn't know what I knew and couldn't confess what she had done, she didn't know if it was just dark thoughts and suspicions or concrete evidence. One thing, however, I decided separately from Bobby. I was going to leave the recorders and cameras for a couple weeks after the show. I didn't think they'd catch anything now, but taking them away too suddenly, when she knew I was looking, would likely be a serious signal that I'd already gotten her own damn voice talking about her affair. While they were at it, she might think it was just a suspicion. The night before the car show, Evan coincidentally showed up at the same place Bobby coincidentally showed up at DQ, and I coincidentally showed up a few minutes later. What a coincidence, right? Bobby and I didn't talk about what was going on near our cell phones or really anywhere that might be bugged, so we'd only discussed the usual stuff lately, but I knew I had to be aware of it. Hank, you have to be the one to set this all off. You have to be the distraction. Evan and his friend, who you won't be dating, will be the guys who trailer the car, and I'll be the asshole in the vault video. I need something from you, though. I need you to send me a picture of him by the car. I have a phone. He held it out to me, with one number preset to another of mine. I'll match his clothes as much as possible, add dark glasses and a Colts cap. Given the quality of the videotape, that should be enough. We need you to stay in plain sight and visible. The only footage you'll take with this camera is of him in the car. Dump the phone at the gas station on the way home, okay? But I need you to take lots of pictures throughout the day, talking to people, getting business cards, even giving your number to some of the vet guys a few times. Make sure people see you and remember you. Get your picture taken on camera as early as possible, because picking out your clothes can take a while. Okay, that's understandable, but what about distractions? What do I need to do for that? You'll have to improvise a little. There has to be something to distract him for 10 minutes or so. Maybe negotiate a prize for the best 1960s cars from each make? The Barracuda may not be a 1970, but it's probably the best 1960s Mopar. Give $100 for each. Best 1960s Chevy, Ford, or Dodge. $300 you can write off on your taxes. Organize the awards there, and the award ceremony will be at, say, 5:30, but you have to be there to pick it up. How does that sound? Improvise, damn it. You just told me everything that needs to be done. That's the whole plan. I'll even make the Mopar last so I can pull it to the main tent longer. If I do it right and talk for a minute about the great muscle cars of the 1960s, and then each guy tells me exactly why his car was the king of the 60s, I can stretch it out for half an hour. See, that's what I meant by improv. Evan added with a laugh. Williams is probably capable of a half hour by himself, not to mention the Corvette and Mustang guys. But if you don't turn on the GOAT, you're bound to piss somebody off. You said Chevy, Ford, Dodge. You have to include Pontiac for GTOs and Firebirds. Okay, now that's $400. Why don't I make it $500 and we'll have a vote among the audience to determine who gets the extra 100. Although it pisses me off to give $100 to an asshole for entertaining my wife. Money well spent if he's Bubba's cellmate, and you'll have an ironclad alibi. Bobby was right, of course. If it set Williams up, it was worth it. The next day started out well. Clear blue skies, moderate temperatures, bright and cheerful sunshine. I swear I thought I could hear robins chirping, so bright and beautiful everything was. I thought so because I knew that today was the day Jonathan Asshole Williams would start the rest of his life without his prize barracuda. It was just a gorgeous day. I couldn't believe the forecast on the radio as I drove to the car show. Cloudy, 30% chance of precipitation, mid to upper 50-degree temperature. As someone once said, I reject that reality and replace it with my own. After paying my toll, I walked over to where Williams was working on creating a presentation area around his car. As I passed him, I quickly snapped a picture of him and the car and then sent a message to Bobby. Moments later, I received a reply. Got it, LMK for showtime, which I translated as, let me know what time you're going to do the presentation so we can pick up the car then. After that, I walked over to the main admin tent. Hi guys, my name is Hank Preston, and I have a suggestion. I'd like to present a small award today to the best 1960s cars from Chevy, Ford, Pontiac, and Chrysler Plymouth. This would attract some extra interest. I'm willing to donate $100 for each winner, and then have a vote for the best among the four for an additional $100. I only ask that this be considered a charity as it would raise the excitement level. I have the money right here in clean new bills. I said, holding out the $100 bills. I think we can do this. What time would you like to do it and how would we judge? One of the lead volunteers asked. We'll hand out tickets to people and ask them to drop them into a bucket or hat of their choice. The winners with the most votes in each category will win, and then we'll determine the final winner by vote. That should be easy enough, I replied. Tim will carry that roll of tickets all the way to the entrance. Have him hand out the tickets to everyone who enters and explain what they are for. Maggie, why don't you tell everyone who wants to come in why they should take these tickets? We'll do the counting and voting at, say, 5 o'clock in the afternoon? That sounds good. Just need a receipt for taxes. I smiled. All according to plan. As I left the tent, I texted 5 p.m. A minute later, a reply came back, okay, drop your phone at the gas station on the way home. Since it was still early, I walked over to the cars and took a long, salivating look at a 1963 Stingray with split rear windows, painted metallic blue, and a 1967 Stingray convertible with a 454 engine in canary yellow. I had a hard time deciding which one was more worthy. I took cell phone pictures, studied maps, pondered the for sale sign on the silver 1965 Stingray, which was the last year that fuel injection was installed on Corvettes until 1982. It tempted me very much. Boy, there weren't many other vets out there, only 5 in the category, but it was still a reunion with the ones I'd been dreaming of since I was a kid. Of the other Chevys, I was surprised at how good the 1962 Impala looked. It definitely would have won if it weren't for the 3 vets I've already mentioned, and indeed, it was up to the task. I found a car for Bobby as well, a green 1969 Mustang Mach 1 Fastback. It was even listed for sale, but after seeing the price, I decided not to tell Bobby about it. He won't live to see it because Sue would kill it for that price. In that case, I'd rather leave the sleeping dogs lying around and the pony cars for sale will go to someone else. If I can't take the fueler, then he can't take Mach 1, okay? There were also a decent number of mid-60s Stangs here, even one 1964.5 convertible that was definitely interesting, but the Mach I was the star. Perhaps if there had been a Shelby or Eleanor here, but there weren't. Of the other Fords, only one Galaxy 500 really stood out. I didn't just sit around all day. I made myself memorable, made some new friends, and talked about my favorites in 4 categories to some of the other people walking around. It was a lot of fun when I finally found both a blue 1967 Firebird and a red, of course, 1968 GTO in the Pontiac set that were really cherry. I whispered to an older guy with a goat that he might want to put some of the Beach Boys on his cell phone as background music. If he created a little playlist, he could put their version of Little GTO on as background. He liked the idea. When I was walking by again later, I heard the end of the loop he'd made. I liked it, and stayed long enough to turn on Little Old Lady of Pasadena. What was particularly amusing was an elderly couple walking by when the song started. She started laughing and asked if she could borrow Goat for a while she took it to church. While she was talking, I told her she should look at the Barracuda, since it was a Mopar, closer to a supercharged Dodge, which in retrospect may not have been the best idea. It was obvious to me that in the Pontiac group, either the Firebird or the Goat would win. However, the Barracuda had little competition, and that was the problem. I needed to keep the Goat in the tent as long as possible. There was a 1968 Dodge Super Bee, green as an avocado with a big 426 Hemi. It was the rarest example of the car at the show, and it was the pride and joy of the owner. It had only one major flaw, at least as a show car. Some owner had at one time removed the original radio and added a newer radio and an ancient 8-track player that wasn't in the car. This damaged the dashboard a bit, and the owner still hasn't repaired the dashboard and carpeting. Also, the car had no original wheels, and instead had 5-spoke rims with hubcaps that looked suspiciously, in my opinion, like mid-1960s Stingray rims. They looked not bad, I suppose, but they detracted from the car. I mentioned it to a few people and probably ruined what could have been a friendship when the owner heard me. I really liked the Super Bee, but the Barracuda had to win. I started to get nervous around 4 p.m. I realized that the crime hadn't been committed yet, but in less than 2 hours I would be an accessory to a crime in Grand Theft Auto, both before and after it was committed, even if I wasn't guilty of it myself. I remembered Bobby and how he had helped me hide the bodies. I remembered Evan and how upset he had been by his wife's cheating, and how much I had been angered and hurt by Marie's betrayal. I also realized that at this point I could pretend that nothing had happened with Marie and continue to lie to myself and others, but if we were going to go through with this, I needed Williams to suspect me, regardless of my alibi. I needed him to get to the point where he betrayed Marie to me and everyone else. And so the time had come. I was nervous but relieved when I saw Jonathan Asshole enter the tent. Everything had been decided, and everything that was going to happen would happen. I sent one last quick message. Go. And that was the end of it. Even though I should have become less calm, I felt a warm sense of relaxation come over me. The Super Bee owner frowned when he saw me with the judges. I also saw the owners of the 3 top vets, the owners of the 64.5 Stangen Mach 1, the Impala owner, the Firebird and Goat owners, and I saw him. He saw me at that moment, perhaps for the first time, realizing that I had funded this little prize. After a moment, he grinned, at which point I wished like hell that Super Bee had beaten him to it. I gave a little speech talking about how the 1960s was the greatest era in automotive history. I heard the guy showing off his 1993 Porsche 911 laughing about it, and how Detroit Steel ruled the roads. I then invited all the owners who had tickets to bring them in to be counted, and there was a small line of people lined up in front of each one that the people running the show had taken to count the tickets. I did a little push-up and asked each person as they brought in their ticket to say a few words about their car. A strange difference showed up in the way they talked about their cars. A few guys started talking about the car chapter and verse, the drivetrain, who designed it, how many were made. A few didn't talk about the car in general, but specifically about theirs as a special specimen. And some talked not so much about the car, but about memories associated with it. Many were family or friends' cars, not collected from strangers, but with personal significance to the owner. I was impressed that the guy with the 1962 Impala mentioned that his dad proposed to his mom in that car, and that they used it for weddings, honeymoons, and to bring the kids home from the hospital. The last time his father drove it was to his mother's funeral, and then gave it to him a week later. Tears came to the eyes of those present. A moment later, Williams followed them. He could have talked about growing up seeing this car, his grandfather's dream car, idle while his grandfather withers from a stroke. He could have talked about what makes the car special in other ways, why it's unique, rare, or desirable. He could have talked about the restoration, but he didn't. He talked, and I quote, about how women seem to love this car. When they see it and hear the song Barracuda by Fleetwood Mac, they just melt. There's nothing better for a bachelor than a hot car. The song cut off with a clatter, and someone in the back yelled, "That's hard, asshole, not Fleetwood Mac, and it has nothing to do with the car." I think that elicited more laughter than applause. Marie cheated on me with this piece of shit? Really? When the voting was over, and it stretched for a full 20 minutes as the judges made sure everyone had time to talk about their car, you could see that people were starting to get excited about some of the cars. And then I was allowed to name the winners. I wasn't expecting it, but it was fun to present each winner with a small certificate printed at the show, a small blue ribbon, and a crisp $100 bill. The Mach-I car was named first. They didn't give me numbers, but it was clear that the Mach-I dominated the Fords. I was surprised when the Impala beat the top two vets, a 63 and a 67, but it was also clear that the owner had been telling that story all day. I think a lot of women and a few men voted for it because the car looked so good and had a beautiful story associated with it. The GTO defeated the Pontiac, but it was clear that the fight was close. People in the tent were arguing about who would win. And then the Mopars showed up. Someone in the back yelled that there should be one for the Dodge and one for the Plymouth. Since I had separated the Pontiac from the Chevys, he was clearly biased since he was wearing a t-shirt that said, "It's a Hemi." I gave up and simply replied that I didn't have an infinite amount of money and needed to draw the line somewhere. The time was approaching 5:30, so I knew it wouldn't take me long to get Williams into the tent and away from the CUDA. And then it happened. Super B won the Mopar group. We weren't done in the tent yet, but I didn't have the option of stretching Williams's time in the tent. He was free to leave, or be a good sport and see who got the last prize. Best of the 60s. It would just be another ribbon, another certificate, plus the last $100 bill, but it would still be fun. And Williams was still gone. I was going to be there to exercise my right to vote in a crowd that still numbered at least 70 people, most of whom had been here since the beginning. I seized the opportunity, even as I suddenly began to sweat over the situation. 5 minutes to the car, 5 minutes to realize what had happened, then a couple more minutes. My world might have changed a lot in the next 15 minutes, but the entire time I was in front of everyone. In this tent? My alibi was solid, but it wouldn't stand up to the conspiracy charges in Grand Theft Auto. I knew I had to remain calm and be as shocked by the audacious theft as everyone else. So I played my part. I asked each of the 4 winners to come up and stand across from me. I raised my hand over each of them, first over the GTO, which drew applause. Then I moved on to the Mach 1, which received a little more. I raised my hand over the Super B, which got a good reaction but was clearly third after the other two. I then moved on to the Impala. Personally, I thought the Impala was beautiful, but not a true muscle car. My vote would go to the 63 Coupe with split rear windows, which I would hardly call best in show, but here my voice didn't matter. The crowd applauded the Impala loudly and emphatically, and as soon as it did, the Mach-I owner turned and shook the man's hand. It was obvious who had won. I grinned from ear to ear as I shook his hand and presented the prizes. One of the other contestants had also brought a can of liquid glass car wax and handed it to him. It was obvious he was touched. He knew the car was good, but it was the story that made it the best car in the show and caught the attention of the audience. And just as he approached the microphone to say how happy he was, Williams burst into the audience screaming that his car had been stolen. I felt uneasy. The owner of the Impala, Thomas Warner. Up until that point, he'd been enjoying the hell out of the moment, and the commotion as people parted ways was an awesome sight. But as he was about to leave, he turned to me and said, "Hank, he really is an asshole, isn't he? But my wife will enjoy her $200. Thanks." He winked at me and walked away. Although he had heard my name mentioned, we had barely spoken before, so I was surprised that he called me Hank, or that he knew my impression and opinion of Williams. I joined the crowd walking to where the CUDA was standing. I went around the neighborhood looking at things and made sure that many others were doing so as well. I guess I had watched too many crime shows and wanted the crime scene to be as contaminated with strangers and things as possible. I even accidentally punched a 10-year-old in the arm, causing him to scatter a box of popcorn. While apologizing, I stepped on the only tire track visible from the crime scene, destroying evidence. Some of the popcorn was there, too. I gave him enough money to buy a new box, since it was my fault. Only when the police arrived, Williams didn't even look in my direction. The crowd thinned to about half as they made their way to the scene. I heard what caused the push. It was one of the officers. Do you know anyone who would want to harm you or steal your car? Do you have any enemies? At this point, asshole looked at me. I have one person I can think of. We need to talk about this in private, was all he said. And then they moved a little aside and I didn't hear him. He made a gesture in my direction and the cop looked at me. The old saying about a criminal always returning to the scene of the crime flashed through my head as the cop looked me over. At some point, asshole looked in my direction again and pointed his finger. I smirked and turned away. A half hour or so later, I drove away, stopping only to wipe my phone. I tossed it out the window onto the grass beside the road a few miles away, not far from where I knew the teenagers hung out. Although there was a chance it would fall into the hands of the police, I doubted it. And the incriminating material was removed anyway. I dumped it there because there was less chance of it being found than at the gas station, where they might find the security camera footage of me doing it. I was alarmed, but I didn't call or otherwise talk to Bobby or Evan that night. I had something scheduled with Bobby the next day and figured we could talk then. However, I told Marie about the theft to gauge her reaction. Hey, something weird happened at the expo today. One of the cars was stolen. Oh, which car? And they found it? Marie asked, not really caring that anything interesting had happened to me that I shared. She was still walking around me like I was on pins and needles, dancing around the elephant in the room. It was Jonathan Williams' '69 Barracuda. It was frustrating. Marie went pale at the mention of asshole. He was like a savage when the cops came. And I don't know why, but he kept looking at me. I cranked the screw a little harder. I wonder why. That was her only comment. So where are you taking me to dinner tonight? She quickly changed the subject. I'm feeling kind of primal tonight. I feel like I'm a shark, devouring and destroying all these little annoying things around me. Well, maybe not a shark, but a red lobster. And you're eating a huge plate of shrimp, got it? It wasn't until I stepped back to clean myself up that I realized she may have made a pun. I was a barracuda and had just gobbled up Jonathan Williams' prize, and he was a shrimp. At least I hope that's what she meant and not something else. The red lobster was delicious, and Marie wore me out again that evening. I think somewhere during all this, Marie was replaced by a star making a feature-length movie a day, as she did me. The next day, bright and early, the police arrived right at 8 a.m. I was already up, but Marie was still asleep upstairs. I was surprised, of course, but also nervous. In my mind, there was only one reason the police would question me. They had guessed what we had done. You can imagine how nervous I was, but I tried my best not to show it. Mr. Preston, may we have a few minutes of your time? One of the police officers asked, judging by the name tag Lawrence. We have some questions regarding the theft of a brown 1969 Plymouth Barracuda, owned by one Jonathan Williams, at last night's car show. We understand you were there and would like to talk to you. I let the two men in, invited them to sit down, and offered them each a cup of coffee. An employee from another office, Hinton, judging by his name tag, accepted the coffee, but Lawrence declined. Lawrence started the conversation when I brought the coffee, creamer, and sweetener. We're trying to find any lead we can. You were there, and from what we understand, you took pictures of the people at the exhibit. We were hoping to get copies of them and ask you other questions. Frankly, Mr. Williams somehow seems to think you may have been involved. We don't agree that you were involved, but Mr. Williams has given us a motive. That said, we know where you were at the time of the hijacking. At least 30 people have already stated that you were at the 1960 Best Car Awards and actually drove it. Mr. Williams himself admits you were there, but insists you know something. What motive could I possibly have? I mean, I don't like Jonathan, but I have no reason to hate him. Heck, he dated my wife before I really got to know her. Their breakup because he couldn't keep it in his pants with other girls eventually led to us being together. He can be a bit of a jerk, but really I should be grateful to him. And are you grateful, Mr. Preston? What do you mean? I can't discuss that right now. It sounds strange. Anyway, the last time I saw Jonathan's car was around 4 or so. Jonathan got to the tent closer to 4:50, maybe 5. And yes, I can give you the pictures I took. I walked over to my computer and plugged it into my phone to download the pictures, then copied them to a small, inexpensive flash drive and returned to the officers, who were discreetly looking at everything in the room. It wasn't pleasant when police officers showed curiosity for no apparent reason. Here are the pictures, Officer Lawrence. I'd like to have the flash drive back when you're done. I'm curious as to why, besides the pictures, you're here. You said Jonathan thinks I did it? At that moment, I heard a slight sigh and looked up to see Marie. I knew I could tell as if the reason for Marie's sigh was the presence of police officers in the room. Honey, these are Officers Lawrence and Hinton. They need the pictures of the crowd and the members' cars that I took yesterday. Oh. Mrs. Preston, can I talk to you for a minute? Hinton asked. Certainly. What do you want? Alone? She looked lost and pale as she led him into the kitchen. What are you talking about? I asked Lawrence. Just need to verify something Mr. Williams said. Now tell me, where did you go after Mr. Williams's car was stolen? I laughed. Yeah, I stayed there for a little while and then came home. Marie, my wife, wanted to go out to dinner, so we went to Red Lobster and then came home. Why? You make it sound as if I had something to worry about. No, nothing like that. He tried to allay my fears, but I knew more about what was going on than he did. He and his partner were trying to find out from my so-called loving wife if the motive asshole had given them was real. Anyway, that was the end of the conversation. A few minutes later, Marie and Hinton returned to the room. Hinton nodded to Lawrence and they got up to leave. Thank you for your help, Mr. Preston. If you remember anything that might help you, here's my card, he said, handing me a card with his contact information, and then both men left. What did they want to talk to you about? I asked Marie. She went a little pale when I asked, but then she said, he just wanted to talk about our old relationship when we were dating and whether you and Jonathan get along. Not too well. He's actually kind of an asshole, I replied. He's not that bad, but he's not you, that's for sure. I love you, Hank. I don't know. He treated people really badly at the show last night. And he was a bad sport, plus he called his Barracuda a babe magnet. Sounds like an asshole to me. Yeah, it sounds like he's an asshole, but he's not important. After all, he's not my husband, the man I love. He's just some guy, some asshole I dated. I love you, Hank. I realized what she was trying to accomplish. She wanted me to say it to reassure her. I love you too, Marie. It hurt me to say it. I knew it was a lie. I knew it was true. And I didn't want to say it, but it wasn't time to stop saying it yet. Bobby called later that day and begged to meet. We talked on the phone, mostly about nothing, like fishing. I wanted to ask him how it went, but didn't dare. Life went on as usual. A few days later, I met Bobby again at the DQ. We sat and ate, talking about nothing. We only briefly touched on the subject of the car being stolen, as it was now traveling all over the world, but asked why. With so many other decent cars at the show, someone had stolen this particular one. We knew, of course, but it wasn't reflected in the conversation because we wanted to avoid being overheard. We speculated as to why someone would want to steal this car. It had already been revealed that the thieves were wearing jackets that said "Classic Cars" and the Dodge Coronet logo that also adorned the truck. As it turned out, they were stickers that had peeled off, but they were enough to fool people. And both of us mentioned in passing that Williams was at fault, and it was insurance fraud. I don't know if the police heard this conversation or not, or even heard about it directly, although we talked about it loud enough that a couple other passers-by must have heard. We hoped the rumor would spread. 10 days after the theft, he finally came looking for me. On the one hand, I was surprised he hadn't done it sooner. He wanted my woman, and he figured I had taken his most prized possession. He picked me up in the parking lot of my work on Tuesday night, just as the 5 people I worked with were getting out of their cars. I'd seen his usual car in the back lot, so his appearance wasn't a complete surprise, but I let it appear that way. Getting hit in the back was painful as hell. It didn't help that he then crashed headfirst into the roof of my car. "Where's my car, asshole?" After that, he crashed face first into the rear trunk of my truck. You couldn't take Marie away from me, could you? She was supposed to be mine from the start. You're just a wuss, you piece of shit. Where the hell is my truck? I was a little stunned, but I knew it was coming. But my coworkers at work didn't. It took a few minutes before they reached me. I passed out because the next image I saw was paramedics working on me. I turned my head and saw him lying 5 feet away from me, his hands cuffed behind his back. That bastard stole my car. He stole it. That limp little prick can't take care of his wife and is mad at me for helping her. You've got to beat it out of him where he put my car. He yelled, and I could hear my boss in the background talking to some of my coworkers. They were discussing my marital status and whether I was some kind of car thief. I decided to play up the situation so that I would have plenty of witnesses to him saying this. I tried to say something like, "Marie cheated on me? With you? You bastard! I will destroy you." I know the blood was bubbling in my mouth when I said it. I'm not sure anyone could have understood me. I felt a prick in my arm as the paramedic inserted the IV. A moment later, I felt my arm go cold, and after a couple of ragged, gurgling breaths, I remember nothing. After Marie's betrayal, I woke up in a familiar place, the emergency room. I didn't wake up right away to hear the words, "His lung was punctured," and it was very hard to breathe, and it felt like someone was choking me and sitting on my chest at the same time. I felt a strong metallic taste of blood. Then nothing again. I woke up for the first time on Saturday, exactly 2 weeks after the theft. Of course, I didn't realize it was Saturday. My last coherent thoughts were on Tuesday when asshole attacked me. I was surprised by the way he felled me with a stealth punch. I was expecting something, but maybe not this. I thought he'd hit me with the proverbial lead pipe. As it turned out, that wasn't quite the case. He hit me with the jack handle from his car. I was unlucky. One of my broken ribs punctured my left lung. As I now know, I barely survived a 7-hour surgery to repair the damaged lung. Even despite my best efforts, it is unlikely that it will ever function as well as it did before, and I will have reduced vital lung capacity and blood oxygen consumption for the rest of my life. Therefore, I will never be able to run the Boston Marathon. Fortunately, I didn't make it my goal to run marathons. When I opened my eyes, I saw that I was in an isolated room, white, brightly lit. On the wall next to the nightstand under the TV was a chalkboard with the words Dr. Wisnowski and RN Maggie next to one of those "How are you feeling?" pain charts. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't hot. I wasn't cold. I couldn't feel my fingers or hands or arms or legs or toes. The only thing I felt was a pain in my throat because of the tube in it. I forced my hand to move and heard a loud, shrill alarm. A moment later, a beautiful young woman burst into the room. I suddenly remembered all those stories about nurses. "Mr. Preston, please don't move. You need to be calm. You are in a hospital. You have been attacked and need emergency surgery. Your wife and some members of your family have been here most of the time, and I will let them in after the doctor comes in. Blink your eyes twice if you understand." I blinked twice, and she said she would have to leave the tube down my throat for a while longer. I must have blacked out again briefly because I didn't see him come in, but his voice brought me back. "Mr. Preston, hello. I'm Dr. Wisnowski. I'm the doctor in charge of your treatment, and I'd like to talk to you. I need you to focus and not try to move or speak, but you can blink your eyes. Once for no, twice for yes, okay?" I blinked twice. "You were attacked last Tuesday. Your attacker used a metal bar and broke 2 of your ribs. One of them punctured a lung. Moments later, he broke another rib, as well as your right arm. I want you to move the fingers, just the fingers of your left hand." And I did. "Good. Now move the fingers, and only the fingers of your right hand. Good." He pulled back the sheet covering my legs. "I need you to wiggle your fingers, but gently, on your left foot, then on your right foot. Good. We were worried that you might have spinal damage, but that doesn't seem to be the case. You're very lucky. You should be discharged from here in 4 days or so, and healing will happen in a month or so." I didn't feel lucky. After looking at the numbers on the chart and then at the numbers on the beeping machines, he told the nurse that he wanted to increase the oxygen supply through the nasal tube, or whatever that thing is called, that they hang on your ears and hang under your nose. He also told her that she could remove the intubation tube, or something, I think that's what he called it, and that I was only allowed fluids, which had to be carefully monitored. Only ice for the first 2 hours, then broth and jello. My goodness, what a feast! Broth and jelly. After she removed the tube, and I felt it, and it was uncomfortable to say the least. She placed a small cup of ice on a tray in front of me, but she didn't give me any, and I quickly realized that I couldn't move my left arm, since it was attached to the bed rail, and my right arm, since it was in an inflatable cast and bandage. As the dryness and sore throat began to hit my brain hard, I decided that Maggie was an inveterate sadist. Luckily for me, a few minutes later Marie walked in. She looked like she was about to pounce on me in bed, but then someone's hand grabbed her and pulled her back. She looked like hell, makeupless, makeup covered, ungroomed, in need of a shower and completely miserable. I don't know what depths of hell I'd managed to pull her from, taking some of her soul and vitality with every word. You. And it was probably the most drawn-out you I'd ever uttered. Cheated. And her eyes began to water before I could continue. Next, each word required effort. Me. She looked devastated that I'd said it. S. And I blacked out again. My next conscious memory was of crying, and then the tenor of Bobby's voice. I could hear soft words being spoken in the background, but at first I couldn't make anything out. Then I began to understand. Bobby's soft words were, "We have to leave before he wakes up again." The tears flowed again. But I love him. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. I couldn't make out who was speaking, the voice wasn't familiar enough. It was too broken by the sobs to make out anything more than words, and barely at that. You can talk to him later, Marie, but you need to go, get some rest, clean up, and get ready. He remembered Williams's words. He knows, Marie, and your being here right now might do more harm than help. I'll call you if he asks for you. I let myself sink back into darkness when I heard another voice say something else. When I woke up again, I mumbled, "Ice." I'm not sure if anyone understood me, but a moment later I felt a small scoop of surprisingly cold ice against my lips. I sucked on the ice and let it moisten and soothe my sore mouth and throat. A second one followed a moment later, and I opened my eyes to see my brother's concerned face. "Welcome back to the living. You gave us quite a scare, little brother." Mike tried to smile weakly. Bobby leaned toward him. "The keys have been planted. Things are about to go to shit, Hank. The asshole who did this to you is going to pay and pay and pay. And when it's over, I'll send his cellmate packs of cigarettes every month that say, 'Make him your bitch' as soon as he's in jail. Right now, they're just keeping him in jail, but it looks like he'll get 5 to 7 years just for the assault. Insurance fraud will be gravy." 2. Graves? Bobby? I muttered slowly. Bobby realized what I was asking. The old saying about revenge and having to dig 2 graves. "This, and your spat with Marie, will be the only graves for you, Hank. But I intend to make sure he goes through hell for what he did to you in the parking lot." I managed to get more ice chips, a small sip of water, and even a small sip of broth that had already cooled. Bobby, of course, had eaten the Jell-O. When I was able to speak well enough, we finally got to talking about something important. "How is she holding up, Bobby?" "She's devastated, of course. I mean, after all, it's all her fault, right? For all her faults, I think she really loves you." "So did you put the key back? Have you put the coin in yet?" I asked. "The key is in the coin slot in his car. He left it unlocked when he attacked you, and it hasn't been evacuated in 2 days. The car was locked for some reason when the police towed it away. I wonder when that happened, eh? Dima's getting a ride. Tomorrow morning. The attack was in the papers, and it was gaining momentum. The news about him yelling about the stolen car came out this morning, so it'll be in the paper tomorrow. Which means Tom will flip a coin after the paper comes out." "Tom? Who's Tom?" I asked, perplexed. "Tom Warner, Darla's husband. Hell, you were photographed presenting him with an award at the car show. An Impala? Did he win a contest or something?" "Thomas Warner is Darla's husband? What the hell?" "No, I don't want to know. The less I know, the better. He won fair and square, Hank. And it's just a fluke that he was able to prove you were there. And he's the one who's going to nail that asshole to the cross when they find Kuda. We'll have to turn the divorce back on, Bobby. Now that it's in the public domain, we can move on." "Hank, aren't you getting revenge on Marie?" I could tell from his voice that Bobby thought divorce was revenge enough. "No, I think I've softened. I still love that stupid bitch. And yes, she probably loves me." I barely heard Bobby whisper loves before he continued. "But marriage is about trust and loyalty. She hurt me and violated that trust. She hasn't been faithful. I can't stay married to her." I cried a little. It was pain, I swear. Okay, brother. I'll bring your shark here on Monday. You ordered a female shark, right? Yeah. At that point, the conversation pretty much dried up, and after a little more time, Bobby left me in the care of the not-so-gentle Marquise de Sade, Nurse Maggie. She was a vicious harpy who tormented me for no reason at all. Tales of naughty nurses are not true, at least around Maggie. The next day, the cops visited me again at the hospital. It was the same couple, but this time there was something different in their gazes, a brooding that wasn't there last time. Mr. Preston, I want to apologize to you. The last time we spoke, you were a far-fetched carjacking suspect, Officer Lawrence began. I just nodded for him to continue. Earlier today, a 1969 Plymouth Barracuda automobile was recovered from a tip received from a newspaper article about your assault. The owner of the storage unit realized the car was in storage, and we found a record indicating it was stolen by the owner, probably for insurance purposes. This asshole stole his own car? Then why did he attack me about it? I asked. Unless I was being completely fake, I knew it was all due to the pain and the fact that I was in pain. Mr. Williams was having a relationship with your wife. We believe he was trying to get you arrested for theft so he could have a clearer field to deepen the relationship. His attack on you was partly motivated by jealousy and partly by a desire to draw more attention to you. Unfortunately for him, we found the key to the vault in his car, and there's a videotape that shows him putting the car in the vault. So it's true then. Marie was cheating on me with him. Did she know he was going to attack me? Huh. Yes, she was having an affair with him. But we don't believe she knew of his intention to attack you. In fact, the attack was prevented because news of it led the owner of the warehouse, one Thomas Warner, who vouched for your whereabouts at the time of the theft, to inform the police of the car's whereabouts when he discovered it was wanted. So insurance fraud and framing? That's what he was trying to do, in addition to physically assaulting me? We believe that's the case. The DA has charged him with assault with a deadly weapon, simple assault, insurance fraud, lying to the police, and all the other charges they think they can bring. I'm not sure this is going to go over well, he grinned, especially since most criminals lie to the police. But he has a case. He's looking at a minimum of 8 years, and they're trying to get more every day. Since he's a clear danger to you and could escape, they were able to deny him bail on the assault charge. The additional charges will make it easier. We talked for a few more minutes and then they left. A few hours later, Marie showed up. She looked scared and like she had been crying. I saw her and got angry. I could vent the anger and resentment I felt now. I could express my pain. But I saw pain in her eyes too, which surprised me at first. How could she feel hurt because of my pain, my resentment, my anger? Eventually, I realized that she felt pain because she knew she had caused it. Her actions had hurt me, had ruined us, Hank and Marie, the golden couple, at least in our eyes, who would always be together, always love, and who had been in sync for so long. Bobby asked me to give you some time before I came over to talk to you. I'm sorry, Hank, I don't know why I did it. It's not about you. It was never your fault. And I never would have believed he could hurt you like that or try to put you in jail. I'm so sorry. What do you say to that? The pain he caused me doesn't compare to the pain you caused me, Marie. I wasn't enough. I gave you my heart, my soul, and it wasn't enough. I gave you my love, my faith, my trust, my loyalty, and it wasn't enough. You killed me, Marie. You took one of the two things I unwaveringly believed in and you destroyed it. The only thing you could have done to hurt me more was Bobby. I need you to leave, Marie. I love you too much to look at you knowing what you've done to me. I love you too, Hank. I know you don't believe it, but it's true. I love you with all my heart and all my soul. I'll do anything you ask. I created this hell I've driven you and myself into, and I agree that only you can get us out of it. She walked away with an expression of devastation on her face. And I still love you, Marie, I whispered as she walked away, tears streaming down my face again. As Scarlett O'Hara said in Gone with the Wind, tomorrow will be another day. The next day was indeed different. My new lawyers had arrived. That's right, lawyers plural. A female shark, Tamara Hughes, and another man she introduced as a civil litigation attorney, Mike Bass, with whom she had already worked. She led the discussion and immediately wanted to badmouth Marie. I had originally wanted to do that myself, but Marie's brief appearance the day before had dampened that desire a bit, and combined with my earlier conversation with Bobby, it called for a softer approach. I decided I wanted to just split the property, only she would get the house and I would get most of our savings. I didn't want the house, not after he trashed it, but I couldn't find it in me to hurt her in retaliation. I'd loved her too much, and for too long to hurt her more than I needed to. I guess my anger and resentment had dried up. The anger, the hate. It takes energy to keep the heat and fire going, and I just couldn't keep it up enough. Nave! My shark was a little disappointed that I wanted to be fair to her. I got the impression that some woman had hurt someone she cared a lot about and wanted others of her sex to suffer when they hurt an innocent person. But I also think she understood. And then the smile got even wider when the conversation finally turned to Jonathan Williams. Bay spoke out on the matter. We should sue him for the injuries he caused. In fact, maybe we should hurry up so we can freeze the assets before trial, and then he'll have less money to defend himself. With a conservative approach, I think we can get $300–500K from him for your pain and suffering, his interference in your marriage, his attempt to frame you for stealing his car, and the slander and humiliation you suffered in the workplace. If we get the right judge, the amount could be more. And the car, too. I want his car. He took away the most precious thing I have, my wife, so I want his car. And then I heard Miss Hughes start to laugh. Oh yes, I like that idea. If I can't find my wife, at least I'll help you crucify him. Marie was told that she had to meet with Miss Hughes in a few days, that there were papers to be signed. Bobby went in my place and later told me that she cried for 10 minutes before she picked up a pen. When she tried to sign, her tears soaked into the papers, and they had to be retyped so she could sign them. This was not pleasant to hear, but Marie didn't protest, didn't object, didn't ask for anything. She trusted me enough to sign the papers. 90 days after signing, we were alone again. It was depressing. 19 days after the attack, the hospital finally sent me to a rehab center, where I was to spend the next few weeks. The day I arrived, I was brought a flower arrangement with one blue hyacinth and one daffodil. There was no card, nor was there a postcard, as they brought the same arrangement every 3 days after that. I don't know what the symbol was, and I can't guarantee I know who sent them, though I suspect it was Marie. After discharge, I went to live at Bobby and Sue's house until I was fully capable and had my own place. Bobby, Evan, and a few other friends of mine took my belongings from the house and moved them either to Bobby's or to a storage unit. The trial went quickly. I was surprised because I had only been in foster care for 2 weeks by the time of the trial. When Sue told me that Bass had left papers about what to wear, when to come, etc., I got nervous. I hadn't told either Miss Hughes or Mr. Bass that I was actually involved in the car theft, at least as a conspirator. I also knew that I really didn't want to lie under oath, so I was very careful about what I signed on the papers. I really didn't want to switch places with Zasrans depending on which side of the court I sat on. I had nothing to fear, however. I was never called to testify. Others did, figuring I was too traumatized by traumatic events to be reliable. I expected Williams's attorney to subpoena me, but he didn't. That meant I wouldn't have to perjure myself or say, I don't remember. Of course, it made little difference. The district attorney denied Williams bail because he posed a danger to me. In a normal situation, this would mean that the defense attorney would prepare a lawsuit for the defendant, but in this case, that didn't happen. So Williams was forced to sit in orange jail clothes during the trial. I found out later that the reason the lawyer was poorly chosen was that he was the cheapest lawyer Williams could find. He assumed that the case would be overturned, or at least be cheap, and he could spend his money on a good lawyer. Big mistake. The whole trial took 2 days, much longer than I had anticipated, because Bass insisted on admitting a lot of additional testimony and evidence into the case. I didn't understand why he was wasting the court's time by bringing in so many of my fellow attackers as witnesses, and why so many people from the car dealership tent were brought in as well, at least later. It was a nasty trick my lawyers played on Williams. They put much of the defamatory testimony and evidence into the official record, where it could be used by the district attorney to aid in the prosecution. In addition, the court reached a quick verdict, resulting in the case being won by a significant margin, more than I asked for. It also didn't hurt that Williams was caught trying to hide assets. After the attorneys got their cut, I received $483,000 after taxes, and a brown 1969 Plymouth Barracuda. The car brought me more joy than money, although the money was good, and it was enough to buy a couple equally good cars, including a '63 Mach 1 and a Vet with split rear windows. I got almost as much pleasure 8 months later when the verdict in the criminal case was announced. The asshole got 11 years, much more than the 6 or 7 Bobby had initially told me about. I decided to go to the last divorce court hearing. By then I was walking, though still using a cane, and could drive. I got behind the wheel of the Barracuda that day, simply because I wanted to get myself out of the depression I was in over the dissolution of my marriage. I never thought it was possible that Marie and I wouldn't be together forever, even before the butter pecan incident. But here I am. I entered the courtroom with Miss Hughes. She was attractive, I suppose. Average height, small-chested but with a butt like Jennifer Lopez. Nice face, medium-length hair, pulled back in what was called a loose bundle. Yes, I had time to catch a glimpse of her. I'm a man. It's what we do. But she was not what my heart desired. I looked around the courtroom and saw Marie. She looked, as she always did, beautiful. Maybe she wasn't a Hollywood beauty. She may not have been Marilyn Monroe, but she could very well have been Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island. I didn't look at my Marie. That woman no longer existed. In front of me stood another woman who didn't have that fire in her that I loved. I was looking at a woman in mourning. The judge brought the court to order and began our case. Tamara spoke a few words that I could barely hear. Marie's lawyer said a few words that I barely heard either, and then said that Marie had something to say to me and the court. This surprised me. She stood up and looked at the judge. She smiled weakly and then turned and looked at me. Turning back to the judge, she began, "Your Honor, I was the luckiest woman in the world. I had a man who loved me, and who I loved. I had dreams, dreams that we would soon start our family. I dreamed of our children and the love we would have. And then I shattered those dreams. I made a mistake, and in a moment of weakness, I betrayed my husband to remind myself of the what-ifs from my past. Sometimes the past has to stay in the past. It was my fault, not my husband's. I had a brief affair with an ex-boyfriend, and my husband and I's relationship changed almost instantly. Even now, I don't know why he realized something was wrong, but he did. In the end, it didn't matter. I set things straight on my own. And that's my biggest shame, and my biggest regret." Then she looked at me, turning away from the judge. "Hank, I want you to know that I will never forgive myself for betraying you. I was weak, I was stupid, and I was wrong. I can't undo that, and I know you can never fully forgive me for what I did. I don't want you to set me free, but I understand that you need to be free in order to heal and be whole again. I will give you everything you ask for, willingly, as I once gave all of myself to you alone. I know that if that were true, you would still be mine and I would still be yours. But I blew it. I hope one day you find it in your heart to forgive me and love me enough to let me back into your life. Know that if you do, I will always love you and never hurt you again. And know that if you don't, I will still always love you." Turning to the judge, she added, "Your Honor, my husband has been more than fair, more than just in his treatment of me. The man I betrayed him with is now in prison. He is being tried for a brutal attack on my husband, committed to free me to be with him. He tried to blame my husband for this crime. I cannot, will not, allow Hank to be hurt in this way, and I will not allow him to cause me more pain. I am asking you to sign the divorce petition and give him a divorce on the terms he offers. Please just don't let me cause him any more pain." I could see tears streaming down her cheeks. I know that my own eyes kept me in suspense as well. The judge thought about her request for a moment, then turned to me. "So, Mr. Preston, are you sure you want a divorce? I can schedule a counseling session." "Your Honor, I love Marie. I will always love Marie. I just can't be her husband anymore. I need to be a man, Your Honor." Marie knew my past, my history. She'd had similar experiences herself, with the very man she'd cheated on me with, fornicated with me when she was the victim of betrayal. I think this is the what if she was talking about. I love her, Your Honor, but I can't be her husband. The pain is too great for that. The judge nodded sadly, then raised his gavel. For a moment he looked at Marie, then at me, then at his gavel. Quickly lowering it, he said, "The petition for divorce in the case of Preston v. Preston is granted." I thought I would never hear those words. Words that took a piece of my soul with them. Words that heralded the official end of my marriage to the woman who was most likely still the love of my life. We walked out of the courtroom, me with my lawyer, Marie with hers. Tamara held me for a moment to discuss the upcoming criminal trial against Williams, mostly giving me advice on how to behave. She knew that part of her job in this case as a male defense attorney included getting revenge on that asshole. As we were nearing the end of our conversation, I felt a light touch on my shoulder and a familiar scent reached my nose. I half turned to her. "I hope this helps you find the happiness I stole from you, my love." And then she was gone. And even in the crowded room, I was alone. Life went on. By this point, I had started working again. Bobby and I went fishing, adding Evan to our regular outings and occasionally seeing Tom, who was becoming an increasingly good friend as time went on. I found a house bigger than the old one but empty and moved out of Bobby and Sue's spare room. Anyway, I needed it. Somewhere along the line I found out I was going to be an uncle and they needed the space. It was a bittersweet moment for all three of us, like dark chocolate when the news is both incredibly joyous but still leaves a bitter aftertaste. The new place had a large two-car garage, so the Barracuda was once again the queen of the garage, although it was used occasionally, and at least once a week we drove to DQ. I was sitting at one of the picnic tables looking at the stone cow, one of DQ's unique features, and contemplating my life when I felt a strong hand on my shoulder pressed against me. "Stop looking so glum, Hank. Hell, you got one of your Oreo Blizzard. At least you can smile while you eat it," started Bobby. "Hey, bro. Looks like Sue couldn't act fast enough to stop you from going to DQ tonight, huh?" I replied, turning to my right to see him. "Never. How the hell did you just describe me, Mr. Preston?" I heard from behind me to my left as Sue came into view. "Open mouth, foot in. Chew down to the ankle. You're just shining today, Sue." "Better, but I'm watching you." I noticed the glint in her eyes and the soft but still restrained nudge of my future nephew. "Watching. Always watching," I repeated in my best Roz voice from Monsters, Inc. "Hey, honey, get your brother a peanut butter milkshake on me, will you?" She quickly replied to Bobby. We all laughed. After a minute or two of laughter, Sue got more serious. "Bobby finally told me how you know, and also told me everything else. I should spank you both for putting yourself at such risk. But I love you both too much to do that. Don't ever do that again. And if I'm ever tempted," she mumbled. "Not likely." And then started again. "I'll remember you and Marie, and I promise it will never happen to me and Bobby." And of course she started giggling and then humming the old Janis Joplin song, Bobby McGee. After all, freedom is just another word for nothing to lose. But feeling good is good enough for me. Good enough for me and my Bobby P. And with those words she smiled, took a spoonful of caramel and wet walnuts from Bobby and took a big bite. "Just don't treat me badly, and you'll never have to worry about being free, baby," Bobby told her, looking only at his fiancée. "Get a room, guys. Oh, wait, that's what happened." I nodded toward the baby bump. Sue giggled and simply replied, "Uh-huh." As we finished our treats, Bobby finally brought it up. "Hank, you need to take a real stress relief vacation. You've been moping around for months now, and we all want Hank back. It's time, Hank. Find some hot stuff, get on the I-65 freeway and head south. When you get to Mobile, turn right for New Orleans or left for Tampa. Either way, drive. You've got the money, and your boss isn't going to fire you. He knows as well as we do that you need to get away for a month or so." "What about the baby?" "Well, we have these things called cell phones, and we also have calendars. I said a month or two, not 4. You could take 2 months and come back to help me finish painting the room." "I'll think about it." And after I left that night, I did. I thought about it a lot. The Barracuda had never traveled farther than Indianapolis from Shelbyville. It had less than 4,000 miles, but it was still a car that deserved to be driven. And Bobby was right. I needed to get laid, needed to get cleaned up. So I made arrangements at work and met Bobby at DQ. That's where I was going to tell him I was leaving. I didn't know where the road would take me, but I was going to leave. I packed light, taking only a small overnight bag. That would be enough because I was going to let the wind carry me wherever it wanted. Imagine my surprise when, as Bobby and I sat at the table, Sue and Marie drove up. They were friends, and had been since I started dating Marie. I should have known that one of the few people who would be there for Marie would be Sue. Marie was with me when I introduced Bobby and Sue on their first date, 5 months later. She looked good, and my heart fluttered a little, must have been from peanut dust or something. She was wearing a short dress, a little short for early fall weather, pale green, with a white sash around her waist and a pair of old sneakers. She looked cute and casual, but even then I could see the hunted look in her eyes. "So I hear you're going to be traveling. Sightseeing in the South for a couple of months," she said. No greeting, just an attempt at manly. I looked at Bobby, who threw a, "You've got some work to do," look at Sue, then at Sue, who was trying her best to portray an "oh my back, my legs, they hurt so much because I'm pregnant" look, and turned to Bobby again. "Yeah, I guess so. It's just, I need to clean myself up, find what's important, you know? I'm not going away forever, just for a month or so. I'll take the CUDA." I pointed to it standing in the parking lot, drawing the attention of the other visitors, and open it up a bit. "By the way, I'm calling it butter pecan now." "Butter pecan? Why, you know what? Never mind. Butter pecan, right? Good," Marie remarked. Bobby and Sue's silence turned into a roar. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Hank. I hope you find it and your heart will be whole again." "Thank you for that, Marie. I just want to be the one you find it again. I know it won't happen, but I wish it were true." I didn't know what to say in response. I finished my ice cream, hugged Bobby and Sue, and then slowly walked to the car. Marie followed me at arm's length from the table with a look of regret on her face. I got in the car and started it, hearing the throaty roar of the big V8. I got out of the car and walked over to put the top down so the wind would flutter my hair and allow me to truly enjoy what the car was giving me. Once back in the car, I looked up and saw Marie still standing there looking at me, tears streaming down her cheeks but still trying to show herself brave and strong. I shifted my gaze to the table where Bobby was looking at me, stroking Sue's bulging belly, and then turned back to Marie. I looked at her and realized that even though we were divorced, even though she wasn't the most beautiful woman in the world, and even though she cheated on me, I loved her. She was a slut. She was my blushing bride. She was a sinner. She was a saint. She was a whore. She was my whore. She was my pain. She was my joy. No, they say that in the end you have to ask yourself if you're better off with or without her. I knew I could live without her. I knew it. Bobby had given me that knowledge back on that fishing trip, months ago. But it wasn't about whether I could live without her. It was about the fact that I didn't want to live without her. We might never get married again, but I knew I still wanted her. I got up, opened the passenger door of the car, and looked at her. The expression on her face, so mournful and sad, had changed just as much. I saw regret replaced with hope, regret replaced with joy, and pain replaced with love. And I saw lust, a lot of lust. And so, 10 minutes later, I was sitting behind the wheel of the Barracuda, which will forever be known as the Butter Pecan, on the I-65 freeway, and Marie was holding out the Hummer to me. I felt the first raindrops splash against my chest as the scent of Marie's hair wafted to my nose. Somehow the dream I had dreamed months ago was almost coming true. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.